I don't, and I can. It's that they cannot conceptualize or associate or sympathize with me without their insecurity becoming their hostility. For I am very handsome, and that I know it, so, too, through many eyes I'm very vain. And despite that I only know it because of others, through my eyes and how they react to me and theirs. And it takes confidence to think like me, and even more to agree with as and how I see. And I've just never seen a fat chick that was comfortable enough in her own skin to scoff in a pretty person's presence, let alone one that carries the self-assured conviction and courage that's required and that a woman must possess to not comply with men's manipulations against me, and to not otherwise happily cooperate with the men that oppress me, for as much as they're not going to touch her fat ass either. But at least by serving them, she almost knows how it is to please a man, and feel valued and included by masculine company, to whom always she's been forced to feel inferior and afraid, and whose approval she's always been lacking to attain. And only pretty girls know what it is to be despised for their beauty, and by those of their own gender, and resented by those of the other, who they should find unworthy of her sex. And so, if she's not pretty, she might as well be male unto me, for she holds no persuasion over me, and I offer no extra incentive unto her. And for that she can only so rarely think for herself objectively, in that no one has ever cared what she thinks. And no man especially, and I'm not going to be the first. Because men hate every opinion that's not their own, and every woman's opinion altogether, and would love to smack any woman that speaks if he were allowed, for that she feels allowed to talk at all in man's presence, and the prettier the girl the better for the social value that she enjoys now over the vast majority of men, the vast majority of which are ugly, sweaty slugs, and unworthy to be in the vicinity of women at all, for the secret sodomy that they share, and their deep hatred for women who shunned them all along since puberty, and so led them to their loathing lies of faggotry that they themselves are ashamed to acknowledge, that most men would do hideous things to their own mothers if they thought they'd get away with it, to so be even with Eve. For since he, man, has suffered woman to speak, her voice has only disavowed his volition over her, and his power and ownership over her, to which he feels entitled still. Because me man strong. Woman no man. Woman weak. Woman no strong like me man. So weak woman therefore must suck ugly chubby little man dick of me man. More so though, it has been my experience that in my faith, big girls, that is extra gratuitously girthy girls, extra gratuitous girth being for me the only real deal breaker, they can only see fault in the God that cursed them to look like this, and to love so much such constant sedimentary, and to so hate exercise and loathe it, as they, more than any, are judged physically and ruthlessly too. For men can hide their little dicks forever, and do, and go to great lengths their whole lives to do so. And no one believes in God or the golden rule when someone finds them unfuckable. And therefore would men solicit against me the uggos, the undesirables, the fat girls first, for that in me gross girls can only see the face of the whole cruel world that shows them its disgust of them, and those same men most of all, which is also why such men would choose unattractive women first and foremost, towards most tasks nefarious, because that ugly girl is worthless in their eyes and utterly expendable at first necessity. That's not to mention how they can also keep easier tabs on the pretty girls around me, the undesirables, or upon those around me who I would desire, and enjoy an implicit access to their shared feminine world, making them around me double advantageous to dark design. And aside from just threatening her with violence to thusly scare her from my presence, why would they commission unto, toward, and against the unique task of me, a pretty girl who will inevitably be conflicted in me, and her loyalty divided, when intention is shared between us, and she wants me as much as I also want her. She's already been forbidden from associating with me by men not nearly as attractive as I am, and whose opinion she holds in so much less regard than she does mine instantly from the flattery that she feels at our shared glance between us, and so will only so will only so soon resent those men that she's supposed to work with and under, yet for whom she has less and less respect every time that she and I share presence. When a fat girl is just happy and will prove infinitely more grateful simply for that somebody picked her to play. What's more, in politics aside, pretty appreciates pretty in the room, that she does not quickly decline his handsome intrigue or fast find fault and so sever friendliness between, or rush into reasons for rudeness to repel his ruddy presence, especially in places where things are rare of vibrant flair, and where more so seldomly do two special halves of him and her find themselves together in time and space, and chance for happiness within proximity. And this is all loathsome, I know. Yet it's not me that you hate then, but the truth. For find the fault in my figure it. And it's not my purpose to make Betty feel ugly, but to show her how ugly all the behavior and the rationale of the men around her. For why should she suffer abuse of those that would use her spitefully, and her ignorance hurts her and me, but to their benefit? And perhaps I'm more polite to simply not pursue callous and crude and unpleasant subjects. Yet how more denotes a friend, one who would placate and pacify you with lies, and their real mind disguise, or one who would trust you with hard truths, and they would devalue your humanity, and your dignity despise, while I would have you wise, even unto my own detriment. For shall I not with these words wear the world's villainy? Am I not now the vile voice of chauvinism, though I tell you honestly of man's whole hideous surmise? And I just share with you the truth, for that's the way it is. If it's any consolation, though, ladies, every woman, regardless of her looks, over every man that I've ever met, or shall ever meet, in all likelihood, has my full heart and love and loyalty and consideration and every benefit that one might find in my support. And how else might I repair me, big girls, that I see the victim in your breach, and how much I hate men on your behalf, who treat you like dirt, after that first he imposed on you his grime. For that man touches her too young, and in so doing initiates prematurely her appetite for stimulation, and in that the sex drive is so closely tied to the drive to consume sustenance, is it hardly surprising then that soon so many can only resolve the precocious sensation by eating, a compensational compulsion that he creates but is quickly out of her control? That so often only the pantry, cabinet, and refrigerator offer her any reconciliation toward the calmer, simpler innocence that he steals from her and replaces with an emotional storm, prior that mankind and all of his buddies would then make fun of her forever? And if you're a man, kill yourself if you look upon a fat girl and hate her for the disfigurement of her wound. Else cry for her, and curse the beast who too soon entered the garden of her girlhood. And down to it, I would rather share company with her and every other woman also, for I would die perfectly contented if I should never share presence with another man again. And perhaps now you hear me but told me my overwhelming masculine prowess, and that I think me some suave Casanova who needs not the rivalry of lesser primates, or that I'll be the next false prophet to stir Kool-Aid at his own compound and for a flock of brainwashed females. But that's not it at all. Though it is true that I have me something feral about me, for that I'm all about the bitches. And the canine behavior of this modern female is feline, with her tail always up, while to the sad perplex of her great and daunting dismay, except but most marginally, ass cracks and sweaty backs comprise so otherwise wholly her counterpart, this contemporary man. Yet I've just always been nurtured, that is encouraged, that is compelled, by male society since the earliest nature of childhood to prefer always the company of women to men, and to gradually reject all fraternal feeling unto that now, at long last and happily, I'm the only male that I know, and I don't even like the dude. I think it has mostly to do with that vile bastard that didn't pull out of my mother. I call him Ahab. He hated his own mother and sister openly before my siblings and I for decades. His own father spoke only once to his son about his own mother. Only once to his son about his own mother, Ahab's grandmother, my great-grandmother, on which occasion, according to Ahab, his father had referred to her, his son's grandson, only as the whore, before concluding the matter and any further discussion pertaining to her. Nothing more to say on the subject. One mention of his grandmother, his father's mother, throughout Ahab's whole childhood, and she's the whore. And Ahab was never intensively instructed or inspired to ever love or value or respect the humanity of women at all. Or he was never able to, for some corruption or void in his very neurology, except in value as factor toward and only for his own exploitation. Before that he claimed one for his own, and had 4 that were his. And this monster has owned my mother since the death of my maternal grandmother, when my mother was 15 years old. And at that time Ahab binded himself unto my mother like an insidious cancer. And like a tumor he grew enormous while attached to her, like the bloated housewives of obsolete jokes. And Ahab has been morbidly obese for as long as I can remember, and he's been always loud and lazy and lethargic. He's always shouted and yelled and hollered at my mother every day that he's owned her, and she, for several years, and over a very long while, has merely been his meal ticket throughout. And upon my mother, Ahab has been always a heavy weight, which she had never any option but to bear, though in Ahab's sock drawer, which my mother routinely restocked with his socks which she folded. Ahab had kept hardcore homoerotic pornography since I was in grammar school. And Ahab's hatred bears still and ever since I was 10 years old the ruthless betrayal of little me, 9 years old, when a little boy was curious about his pivotal male parent and looked through the hidden stuff of his male standards secretly. And throughout my entire life, Ahab exhibited an angry, explosive, volatile, tense, irritable temperament, and he displayed always a bad mood within the home. That well before I could appreciate it, Ahab's proximity positively corresponded and directly correlated to my anxiety. And I cannot remember ever a time when I wasn't happier without his presence. Beyond Freud, though, and any perverse edible parallel that your readership might falsely infer, as though I should crave the destruction of my rival that begat me, but because I seek to reclaim the womb that by nuptial forevermore was his, except once for 9 months when it was mine, and not otherwise because he was wretched and worthy of worse woe at the hand of me, his foe. Psychoanalysis aside, I was just always an awkward and overly emotional mama's boy that sensed her teat, and throughout my entire childhood my mother was my only and greatest confidence until I was old enough to appreciate the more beautiful grace of softer strength, at which time, and until many years after, she became and long remained the greatest example of my hope and courage and character and calm composure under pressure. And what is more, her perfect maternity grew the heart that I once had in me, and she was the model and the foundation of the soil, and the little light of spring, and the nursing summer rain of the great love which once it held, before now it is numb. And she shall forever be the inspiration, and the derivative, like the primary root cause, for whatever goodness might still be found some day in me, albeit I don't know if I shall ever more comply that she share my company forever at all, nor that I shall ever behold her face again, for she was once my hero, and not by choice, but because her incredible character became it, and was more difficult not to admire, and it hurts me grievously to so resent her. And so, though I was never accepted and often ostracized, on and off, hot and cold, over and over, time and time again, by the boys with whom I grew up, that except I played sports in my small town, I had never known any friendship or camaraderie whatsoever with my male peers. By the time, then, that my rhetorical wheels started returning, I had long been bred to little need friends of men, nor the company of males at all. Whatever fraternity I once felt, by the time I picked up the book, and the few boyhood associates with whom through college I was still friendly, even close perhaps, and my 2 brothers also, they all became the fire that sought to burn me, and so all became my betrayers, and I their adversary. But ask yourself, if they were all incentivized with reward, or to avoid responsibility for some secret sin or shameful act, would your friends too not turn on you? And if they only approached but to foil and hinder too, and came only dissembling unto you, would you not also very soon hate all the men you ever knew, and every man surrounding you? Grow up also being subtly despised by Satan all along as he raises you. Perhaps you'd disown your father too, and wish instead you never knew the guy that grieved your mom with goo, and have for men no trust in you. Maybe you'd never let another man near or ever close to you. And so, although my affinity for women and my desire to be only in their midst, unanimous and totally, while first and foremost it does indeed derive from my desire to share love with women voraciously, that it has been my distinct and only sole hope, pursuit, motivation, compulsion, and ponderance to explore and share touch with females, since all that time so long ago, when a man made his impact upon his daughter and me, together, when both we two of us were yet but three. Yet, as you can see, my sorority proclivity is not all just my potency. It's also from my misandry. All that, though, being said, at long exhaust yet paramount pertinence, insomuch that I renounce all paternal paternity and claim no kinship to any chromosomal fraternity found or formed, or one time fondly felt therein, and having never known man maternal paternal, which wherefore require no renunciation, yet insomuch too that my mother would hate St. Valentine henceforth, and his sombre solemn remembrance that would age sour that year, which she would regard with infamy forevermore as that sad, that sorry, that stained, that shitty Saturday, for the morbid, foul, belligerent bowel movement that would burden her life 39 weeks and 2 days later, 31 years ago this day, as I live and breathe and smell and stink. But so that she too, like my 4 sisters, who desire husbands simply to bear no longer disgrace, in so sharing with me their father's surname, insomuch that my mother as well is ashamed and regrets being any relative to me, or that her sphincter were ever slit to shit me out, thus leaving me, though, without feminine family or female lineage either, beyond my aunt, that is, who, though she was present 3 times a year all throughout my life, Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, but suffers me, and may and let God bless her for it. Yet we've long ago lost, since perhaps my petulant pubescence, and have been long foreign to familial familiarity. And she is also maternal, my aunt, my mother's sister, and bears not to her reproach the surname so notoriously tarnished by my face.